We are live.
Good evening. Welcome to the Mahone Bay Town Council meeting for this 8th of September. All of our councils and some of our staff are in attendance, and we have you folks at home that are watching us on YouTube. At the end of the council meeting, we will afford an opportunity for questions from those of you who may be watching. And of course, this presentation is going to be available after the fact on YouTube. So with that, we'll call the meeting to order at 7:01. Council, you have an agenda that was emailed out to you. What is your wish with the agenda?
I move be approved to circulate it.
I'll
Seconded
second
by
that.
Councillor Carver. All in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go to item number 2 on the agenda, number 1 being the approval. And that is the minutes of the regular meeting of July 30th. What is
Move they
your
be
wish?
accepted as circulated.
Second that.
Moved and seconded, that they be approved as circulated. I would note item number 3, Deputy Chief Adam Meekins of the Fire Department presented the RCMP quarterly report for March. I know Deputy Chief Eakins is quite the performer in the fire department, but how he would manage that, I don't know. So we can make that adjustment. Okay, anything else? Okay, so this is to approve the minutes as presented with that one amendment. All in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go to the next item on the list, the special meeting of August 6th.
I move be approved to circulate it.
We have a seconder, Councillor Bain. All in favor? Motion's carried. Next item is the special meeting of August 11th.
Move that they be accepted as circulated.
Thank you,
Seconded.
Councillor Carver, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? Motion's carried. And let's go to the final item, which is the special meeting of August the 19th.
Move they be accepted as circulated.
Move that be approved, seconded by Councillor Now. All in favor? That motion's carried. Great stuff. Boy, you can get through those old meetings.
A very
No,
light
please.
August.
For individuals to speak tonight. Let's go to our correspondence. The Community Foundation of Nova Scotia donation.
Mayor,
Yep.
I just want to point out that, I just want to point out that this item 4.1 appears to be exactly the same as item 4.4.
I
agree.
And that was duly
That's a
noted
typo.
by the deputy clerk and the CAO, and it was changed on a subsequent iteration
Oh.
of the agenda.
Didn't
So
see-
the 4.4 has been removed because it was the same as 4.1.
I didn't see the new iteration of the agenda. Thank you.
Okay. The deputy clerk, did it come out
I
to
think
all the changed
you-
agenda?
if you click on the link now, Penny, on your calendar, it would take you to the updated agenda. But if you had previously saved it or printed it or anything, then it would have been that version.
So, CAO, did you want to speak to this? It's fairly straightforward, but
Yeah, I guess my main comment is this is the first major donation under the town's donations policy, which requires donations over $5,000 to be approved by council. So under that policy, we would have a responsibility to maintain the asset in question for 5 years, after which time, it's understood that there wouldn't be a requirement in that regard. So those are the kind of two stipulations. As a motion of council would be approved for the town to accept it. And then as it notes, it would be for the installation of nets. Then those nets we would be essentially agreeing to maintain those nets for 5 years with the proceeds of that donation.
can I have a motion?
So moved.
Deputy Mayor? Deputy Mayor, you're moving to accept the donation?
Yes.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Feeney. Question? All in favor? The motion's carried. Apparently, the goalposts we have now, they no longer use in Europe because they are unsafe. The way that they're constructed and what they're constructed of. And this new type that this grant or this donation will allow us to buy are the standard of the day. Okay, let's go to 4.2. Correspondence from Ray Krushower about her property out on Main Street. This is the last house on the block. Councillor Feeney?
Mayor, I'd move that we forwarded the correspondence to our planners and to our Planning Advisory Committee for review and deliberation.
I'll
Seconded.
second that, Your Worship.
Seconded by Councillor Bain. Moved and seconded that we pass this piece over to our Planning Advisory Committee and to the planning staff for their opinion and recommendation, CAO.
Yeah, well, certainly just to get the order of things with this motion, my understanding would be we'd pass it to the planning staff who would provide a report back to the committee. And I just want to make sure that's the mover's understanding as well.
So the
Fair
motion will
enough.
read that way, that it goes to the planning department first for review and then to the PAC for recommendation. Okay, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Let's go to correspondence from Aaron Collery on the Blockhouse Mahone Bay Fire Department and the proposed new Town of Mahone Bay Fire Hall.
Your Worship, I would move that we would write Mr. Collier back and thank him for his letter.
Okay, we have a motion,
Second.
seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? Oh, Councillor Carver has a question. Yes, Councillor Carver.
I will plan to vote against this motion because I believe that there is a lot of information in the letters pertaining to the discussions in 2015 and 2016, where both the Town of Mahone Bay and the Blockhouse Fire Department indicated a willingness to discuss a shared service. And somehow those discussions just faded away, although there had been indications from both sides that there was willingness there. So I would prefer to see a motion that those discussions be resumed or some kind of outreach or attempt at dialogue be initiated.
Okay. There is a meeting upcoming between our fire department and the fire department in Blockhouse to talk about shared service, to talk about mutual agreements, and to talk about formalizing those arrangements.
May I ask who's attending that meeting?
It'll be the fire chief and his team, and the fire chief and team from Blockhouse.
And who from council?
No one from council, because the meeting is seen as one of interoperability between primarily those two fire departments, but other fire departments in Lunenburg County as well.
So, okay, so it's interoperability. Thank you for that information.
Okay. On the question, all in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, and okay, 4.4 is gone. I've got the same one that you had, Councillor Carver, with 4.4 on it. Next, we have 10 correspondence items intended as information. What is council's wish?
Motion to receive and file the 10 pieces of information.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Now.
Can I make a comment? Your
Yes, please, Councillor Bain.
I think in 5.5, it was interesting to note that one of our councilors, Joe Feeney, is vice chair of, what is it, the assessment thing, Joe? You could maybe expand on that just a little
Yeah.
bit, please, if that's.
The
with your
property
permission.
values, the Property Value Services Corp. I think there is from the chair, Greg Keefe. It's the annual report, but I think the most salient point about the PVSC's report this year is the fact that in recognition of the scenario, the situation that all the municipalities across the province find themselves in, the organization, the corporation, all of which all the municipalities own, are keeping rates fixed and flat for the year, which required drawing down upon a substantial amount of the corporate reserve to be able to pass that benefit on to the municipalities. So I think overall it was pretty successful years. But there is some information that might be well worth reading if you're interested. And I'm only a phone call away if you want any of the story behind the story.
And any citizen who may be interested in that, it is part of the package that's related to this particular meeting. Councillor Carver?
Yes, I wondered about item 5.7 from ACAF, the Coastal Action, and the request for the council to consider representation on their board, although they're not asking formally for representation from every council. They did suggest the possibility, so I'm just wondering what we plan to do with that.
May I speak to that?
Councillor O'Neill?
Thank you. This was discussed at the last several board meetings and it will be ratified. It's expected to be ratified at the upcoming AGM. My sense of it was that it was a very polite exit, as council has been represented on that board for quite a number of years. And it's a very warm invitation for those councillors who are currently on the board to remain without obligating council. I think it would be the most tactful way to put that.
So may I comment?
Yes,
Would it be appropriate to refer this to the new council after the October election to see if council does want to send a representative?
I think that would be a good idea, Councillor Carver, and a most appropriate idea.
If I may respond to that, my sense of it in discussions is that following their AGM, that this could potentially cease to be a committee of council, and that individual councillors would be welcome as citizens to apply to their board.
And we may have a councillor in the new council batch who has a personal interest in the work that BayCAF does.
Yeah.
May want to get involved in that. Councillor Bain.
Yeah, my impression from talking to the chairperson is that if a councillor, in fact, would like to go on, he just simply won't be representing the town council.
Okay. So, okay. Are we making a
Colleen,
motion on the floor now, do we not?
I'm sorry, I believe someone was addressing me. I thought just as a final piece of information, it might be of interest to, for full disclosure, to say that I do intend, although I will not be reoffering for council, I do intend to remain on the board and have been accepted as a board member. Yeah.
Good for you. Glad to hear that. Councillor Carver.
Yes, and having heard the more information, I realized that even if council that thought it was a good idea to assign somebody, there's no guarantee that that person would be a shoe-in to the AGM. They would have to be elected.
That's
Yeah,
right.
thank-
Well,
yeah,
seeing
so
as that council does not have to formally support.
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
and
So I
we-
take it all back. We don't have to talk about it again.
Okay, good. Then we've received and filed this item, I think. Did we not? Yes, we did. Okay, that's done. Let's move on to staff reports.
Worship,
Yes?
Your Worship, we have the motion on the floor, but we haven't voted.
Oh, that's what we were wondering about. I was also mistaken on that, Mo, sorry.
Gotta get your hand up early. Okay, all in favor to receive and file? Done. Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Let's go to staff reports. 6.1, staff report to council.
As always, I can address any questions. There's not a whole lot, being as it's the first report of the month, and as you know, we update most of it on the second meeting of each month.
Yes.
Mayor,
Councilor Feeney?
I just had a few questions. Under the section capital budget, 2020, 2021 capital budget, item 8, I believe council amended the budget for that item to 30,000 at our last meeting. I believe that was approved at our last council meeting. We might want to just make that change.
Yeah, that will be reflected on, so that's one of the parts that updates on the second meeting of the month. So that
fair
should be
enough.
We
reflected on
did
the
make
next one.
that change, Councilor Feeney.
Fair enough. Item 20, I think we would say that item's been deferred for this calendar year versus delayed, right? Like, we've made a conscious effort to prioritize the other elements of the wayfinding program and made a conscious effort to defer that item for this calendar year. That would be the cemetery related, the fence at the cemetery and the street lamps. I just think that's not a project that's hasn't started yet. Like, we as a council decided to formally defer that to next year. I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah, and that's another one. We'll update that on the next council.
And the only other item was number 9, was the transportation budget. Is that, if you could refresh my memory, CAO, is that budget was the all-in budget, wasn't it? Assuming matching funding, the $200,000?
Yes, that was to be half matching funding, and then as it turned out, the project we're estimating about 160,000 rather than 200.
Okay.
So technically, the application for funding is for 100,000, and our portion would be 60.
Right.
Now, we have some expectation that, that's the best case scenario. If they come back and say, would you still do the project at less than 100,000? We're still below what we budgeted, and council can discuss.
Okay, fair enough. I keep forgetting that we make these changes at the back end of the calendar, back end of the month, the second meeting. of the
All
month.
good reminders, though, because it has been, a month and a half since we've had a second meeting of a month. So
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the CAO? Okay, let's go to the next staff report. Temporary vending and special events bylaw. Deputy Clerk, are you speaking to this, or?
We were asked to provide a report following the public hearing the 1st of August 6th, I believe. And we were asked to provide a report in response to the questions raised in the letter from the Chamber of Commerce. So staff have provided that report. You will see a few amendments. The other question was, would addressing those questions in the letter create a substantive change that would require us to go to public hearing? So in the staff report, you can see that the recommendations in the bylaw, the amendments that are in the bylaw attached to your package, we do not feel are in fact a substantive, or any of them are substantive changes, but of course that's up to council what they would like to do with the suggestions that are in your package.
Okay. And you are recommending that council give second reading to the temporary vending bylaw as presented here.
That's correct.
Okay. Mayor, Councilor Feeney.
Mayor, hearing that those edits are not substantive, I would move the council give second and final reading to the attached temporary vending bylaw as presented.
Seconded.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor. Quicker on the hand, Councilor O'Neill. Councilor Carver.
Yes, today I sent in some comments and questions about the vending bylaw, which there were a couple which seemed to warrant possible changes of just in simple wording. Is this an appropriate time to pick up those suggestions as part of the discussion on the motion?
Question for the motion.
that correct?
Procedurally, if the mover and seconder agree, you can have this be to give second reading as amended to a non-substantive change that you might bring up now. So if you propose that change, then the mover and seconder could agree, or if they don't agree, then it would be an amendment that would have to be voted on as an amendment.
Okay,
Well, it was material that everybody received during the day today. So one of them was in the definitions of market. And I asked why the word seasonal is needed. That word is going to be removed from that definition. Is that correct, Maureen?
Yes, it was just left behind when we took it out of the definition, out of the
Okay.
title, so that's fine. We can remove
It's
that.
not coming out of the title, but it was actually in the text.
Yes,
in the
when we
body.
changed the word we were defining, we just missed
Yeah.
that one. So in the sentence, yes.
Okay.
Councilor Carver, that relates to the definition of market?
Yes.
That's
But-
okay.
Yes. So there was another question I had about the word permit, and why not call it a temporary vending permit? Just for clarity.
If that's something council wants to do, we could go through and we could change out permit for temporary vending permit whenever it's applicable to this.
Yeah, I thought we had dealt with that at another meeting previously, but for me, it just repeats, it's temporary vending permit all the way through.
Deputy Mayor, you have a comment?
Well, we've been working on this since I think March. And to get comments 2 hours before the meeting, I don't think is proper. And these are trivial, in my mind, trivial word changes. And I think what we have now is a good document. And if Councilor Carver had these thoughts, they should have come out at least on Friday or Thursday, not 2 hours before the meeting. Just my view. Thank you.
Can we leave it to staff to review Councillor Carver's comments and use or not use the ones that they see as relevant, provided they don't fundamentally change the intent of the policy?
I think it's unfortunately it's necessary if there's going to be any changes when the
Yeah.
motion's on the table that they be expressed right now. So if Councillor Carver wants to, it's her prerogative to do that. But yeah, I don't think staff can make any changes that aren't expressed right now for the viewing public.
Councillor Carver, back to you.
Yes, it's in the nature of documents such as this, that different things show up at different readings. So one of the questions I asked was whether we should require that the temporary vendors, the mobile vendors, display their permit. I don't believe that's included in the bylaw in the draft, and whether that would be desirable to include.
Sorry, may I clarify? My understanding with the questions earlier today were require that my understanding was that the question earlier today was that do we require them to display all permits? We do have something in this policy, in this bylaw, that they would have to display their temporary vendor's permit. But my understanding of your question earlier today was all permits. And I'm just not sure how many that would be, depending on federal and provincial guidelines. That could be a lot. That was my response.
Yeah, yes, that was a bit of clumsiness on my part. And
Okay.
the real question that I wanted to have was whether or not it was required for the municipal temporary vending permit to be displayed. Okay,
Yes,
I'm
and that's
sorry.
included in
And
this.
I missed that in the documents.
Councillor Now, you had a comment?
Yeah, I believe that if you look at it properly, I know when we had to get our provincial food vending permits from them, we have to display that so that it's visible. So I think that the provincial ones do have to be displayed. Just the permit, that doesn't explain anything else, just shows that they have the permit.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carver, back to you.
I'm done.
You're done?
Yep.
Okay. Councillor Feeney.
Mary, as always, Councilor Carver adds value with her edits. And I think, I'd amend my motion to accept those edits and proceed to the vote.
Okay, seconder? Are you in agreement? Okay, the mover
Yes.
and the seconder are in agreement to accept the edits offered by Councillor Carver. Okay, all in favor? Motion's carried. So that was the temporary vending bylaw.
Mayor, I'd also move the council give second and final reading to the attached events bylaw as presented.
Okay, seconded by the deputy mayor. On the question. All in favor? CAO or deputy clerk, were we not going to do an implementation date by motion for this?
The draft bylaws had the implementation date changed to January 1st, 2020. And that we thought that would address a lot of the concerns raised by the Chamber of Commerce, because
Okay,
a lot of what they raised were 100% things we were thinking of. It's just we want to have that opportunity to have everything clear and everything available to event planners before this actually comes into effect.
okay,
That's a good segue to the process from here, having had the two bylaws approved. So the clerk will cause to be published a notification around the passage of these bylaws, I believe is the proper procedure, Mo. And then we'll do some public education between now and January 1st around the new bylaws and what the
Implementation.
requirements are for vendors and event organizers.
okay. Counselor, now you were going to speak?
I think Maureen, you said January 1st of 2020. Should that be 2021?
Yes, it should be. I'm sorry. January 1st, 2021. Sorry.
I hear you, Richard.
Counselor
A
Bean
lot of
was gonna
retroactive
jump on
permits
that,
that need
so
to be
was
taken.
Counselor Feeney.
Same thing.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the staff report on the violence in the workplace policy. Counselor Carver. You're on mute, Counselor Carver. You're on mute?
Okay,
Okay,
sorry. I would like to move that council forward the draft violence in the workplace policy to the town solicitor for review and recommendation. And as an addendum to that, that the comments that I raised today be included with the draft when it goes to the solicitor.
Seconded.
would you like to share those comments with us, Counselor Carver?
They were sent in writing today. Some of them were about wording, some of them was a typo. One of them was where two different points didn't seem to match. One says the complaint goes to the council, while the other says a complaint goes to the solicitor. I, for one point, suggested consider including the option of having investigations conducted by an outside investigator, possibly a private firm. Having the town solicitor do an investigation might create a conflict of interest. There was no typos. A procedure, the draft doesn't specify a procedure for council to discuss and decide issues pertaining to council members. Should the policy include a section that specifies that any discussion of the matter be done in a closed session, so there is no publicity arising from an unfounded allegation, and that if a violation is found to have occurred, the disposition or decision be made in an open session. I asked about the consequences or the disposition of a behavior that was found to be contrary to the policy. Should the policy itemize the possible consequences for a member of council who is found to have violated the policy? For example, vote of censure, removal from committees and appointments, removal of discretionary privileges such as attendance at NSFM or FCM meetings and conferences. And then in relation to NSFM, I asked how will this policy fit with the current initiative underway by NSFM to develop a standardized code of conduct province-wide. I absolutely agree that the draft policy should be reviewed by the town solicitor and would hope also that my questions be provided to the solicitor as well. Just,
Thank you, Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, just procedurally, I'm prepared to, to vote on the motion, but maybe a little more conversation on the overall policy needs to occur. Fundamentally, as we discussed at length in our last meeting, I have, I think, a difference of opinion with the author of the document around, I guess, the benefit of section 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, and 3.7. Continue to see a blending of objectives here between what was originally a workplace related policy that would address the workplace of the town of Mahone Bay, and now I see it stretching into areas including mayoral and council behavior, which I believe are well addressed within the the provincial municipal government code of conduct and other documents. So this originally started as we should put a policy in place. We had a terrific draft coming from the town of Yarmouth, which we've generally taken and cut and pasted. But I mean, it's not like Joseph Howe is crafting this from scratch. We've dealt with this for 3 meetings now. And I believe we could continue to deal with modifications and improvements in the document, in every meeting for the next, month or more. So I do agree with Councillor Carver that it's a work in progress. I mean, it's not perfection personified at this point. I do think there are issues around the 3.4 through 3.7 that need to be addressed. And fundamentally, I don't believe I've seen any other examples where council within their development of policy refers the policy before it's ready for prime time to our solicitor for an opinion. I would just continue to work on this policy until we believe that the majority council will support it. And I don't believe I don't believe that this document in this format would get approved tonight without some more edits. Maybe it's more appropriate for us to continue to work on it in-house before we send it to our lawyer and incur those kinds of costs.
Okay, thank you. If I could, I think one of the reasons why NSFM and the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing is having such difficulty getting to what they call the penalty phase of these documents is that the role of the elected official is different than the role of the employee. The employees in the town of Mahone Bay work for the CAO. The CAO works for council. Council works for the 1,100 citizens that are out there in the town. And for our town, the difficulty, and this is what the municipal affairs is struggling with, is coming to grips with if the CAO or the CAO and the solicitor or an employment tribunal group within the town were to censure a councillor and the councillor was not participating in meetings or going to committee meetings, then that councillor is not able to do the work for which they were elected. And it's that issue around elected versus employee that municipal affairs continues to struggle. And I think that's why we haven't seen a result from the provincial government yet on that particular issue. And I would agree with Councillor Feeney. I think Councillor Carver is on the right track. We've had these discussions before, but I think there needs to be some fine tuning of the current policy, number one, but we also have to be cognizant of what the province and NSFM is putting forth for all municipalities. Other comments? CAO?
I just wanted to agree with Councillor Feeney's point about the solicitor reviewing a draft. Staff would certainly only recommend sending a draft that council feels is appropriate and council is ready to approve. It's a lot of expense sending questions and an unfinished draft. So where there have been a number of additional questions raised since this was sent out, more than had been anticipated, I think, by staff. I would agree that council should get this to a point where you're comfortable before sending it to a solicitor.
Deputy Clerk, can you read the motion that's on the floor at the moment, please?
Let me just roll here. That council forward the draft violence in the workplace policy to the town solicitor for review and recommendation, including the comments raised by Councillor Carver on September 8th, 2020.
Thank you. Okay, you've heard the motion. We've had the discussion. Councillor Carver.
I'm willing to withdraw the motion at this point, based on the discussion that we've had and on the understanding that there will be continued discussion about what we might like to see
Okay.
in the draft policy before it goes to the solicitor, in full appreciation of the cost. And yes, that's so that we would be sending something that council was feeling comfortable with. I also want to just point out that a neighboring municipality had the experience of issuing consequences for a sitting councillor in the not so distant past. So it's not an unknown precedent. It's not an unknown event.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Carver. Who's Councillor O'Neill, did you second that motion?
I did, and very good discussion, and I agree to withdraw the motion.
Okay, thank you. So that will go back to the drawing board.
And just for clarity, should we just put it on the agenda in its current form for a future meeting? Or how would council like to approach that?
Would we not wait until we review to see what could be, should be amended?
I'm just wondering what the trigger will be to bring it back up. But council can defer it to a specific meeting date or establish some, a context for us to bring it back up. But otherwise staff won't know which agenda to put it on. I assume you don't want it on your next meeting agenda.
Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, so I think we've got two issues. We have a conflation of the objectives of this particular policy with the code of conduct for elected officials. And I'm not sure where the red line is between those two policies. But I do think that there should be a separation between the two policies. And I don't think our original intent was to have an umbrella policy that would address every element of municipal government. I think the original intent was something specific to the employees of the town, from the CAO down in the org structure. Maybe not everybody agrees with that, but I think that is a potential way forward. So I do think if we provided some direction to staff to in the context of the education process with the new council, to review where all the code of conduct documentation is going to be reviewed at length again, there may be an opportunity for us to figure out, what we're trying to achieve here, which was, I think, Councillor Carver's identification of a gap. We had a gap, and it would be an improvement if we had a policy. There was a gap that she acknowledged, that council agreed with, and we moved forward with this policy development. But at this point, I do think that the policy is conflating with other policies. And over the next few months, if we can sort through that, I think we'll be in a good place.
Okay. CAO, comment?
If staff were approaching the question of staff violence in the workplace as it affects other staff, we wouldn't use this draft as a starting place. We have an employee conduct policy and a respectful workplace policy currently. So we could certainly review our employee conduct policy with respect to violence and look at an amendment to that policy. But I don't think that we would have started with this draft, which was developed in the municipality of Yarmouth and applied to a council employee infraction. So my suggestion would be if council wishes to direct staff to review our employee conduct policy as it relates to workplace violence and come back with a recommendation, that would be the most appropriate way to address employee violence in the workplace, if that's the concern here.
Okay, thank you. Is that the direction for staff?
Sounds good to me, your worship.
Okay,
Yeah, I think if we're going to separate them, then that's the place to start, is what we already have, and then make the amendments to it to be suitable.
and ensure that it reflects the nuances in policies like the Town of Yarmouth policy that kind of raised a red flag as being missing in our policy. Okay.
Carl or Richard, does one of you want to make a motion to direct staff to review that policy in light of violence in the workplace and come back
Deputy
with
Mayor so
recommendations?
makes.
It's so moved.
Councillor Now has seconded the motion to give direction to staff. All in favor? Motion's carried.
Thank you.
Okay. The outdoor burning bylaw. Boy, hot topic. Hot topic.
Your worship, I would move that council provide second and final reading of the revised outdoor burning bylaw as presented.
Second.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bain? Councillor Carver, you had some comments out today on the burning bylaw.
Yeah, the one that I would like to suggest be included is to include under the definition, to include, I don't have it right in front of me, I'm sorry. That the definition of the fire pit includes the bottom. It says all sides, which I take to be sides, as opposed to the bottom, which is different from side. So I just suggest that in that definition, it would specify including the bottom or underneath.
Okay.
But
Councillor Now, is that a reasonable assertion that we also identify the bottom side as well as the sides of a burning vessel?
Yes, we've already run into that with one pit that we were looking at to approve. And the inspector and myself both agreed that, yeah, fire can travel underground as much as it can
Yeah.
travel on top ground. So I think the bottom is very important.
Okay. So we'll make that amendment, that adjustment. Mover, the seconder is okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor? That motion is carried. Let's go to the ICIP climate mitigation application.
So about 6 weeks ago, we had a great announcement from the provincial and federal governments concerning investing in investing in Canada Infrastructure Program climate mitigation stream through the Department of Energy. It's a federal and provincial program to fund energy, renewable and efficiency projects, including building efficiency projects. So municipalities have been reviewing their buildings, their older buildings in particular, and looking for opportunities to replace those buildings. And we are in a context where we have the community hall, fire hall, hall at the old fire station, which is our only town operated community space that is owned by the town, which would be eligible for this program. So council has a recommendation to apply based on a request from the fire department that we would look for these opportunities to replace the current hall. And there is some analysis presented reflective of that, if anyone has any questions. Oh, and the deadline's tomorrow. Sorry about that. I didn't set it.
Better late than never.
Okay. Questions for the CAO? Okay. Doodly-doodly-doo.
Get it done.
Pardon me?
Let's get it on the way.
I can
Only
put
has
up on
until-
this.
He only has until tomorrow to get it in there, so.
I can put up on the screen if you guys want to, but there is a recommended motion directing
I've got
staff
it.
to apply.
The recommended motion, if somebody wants to make it, is that council direct staff to apply to the Nova Scotia Department of Energy for ICIP climate mitigation funding for the proposed community hall project.
So move.
So moved by
Seconded.
Councillor Carver, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. On the question, all in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go to the wastewater effluent project. My God, council gets some interesting stuff, doesn't it?
Mm.
Wastewater and effluent.
So another big capital project, even though obviously it's not one that people are really excited about, is complying with our effluent requirements for federal legislation. Those requirements are to remove chlorine from our treated effluent, which goes out into the harbor at the end of the lagoon treatment process for wastewater. Should note that the chlorine in question is added as a final stage of the treatment process. So essentially what we've been working towards, and this has been on council's agendas for about a year now as we've gone through the preliminary stages and getting the concept developed, is a different option for that final treatment process. Instead of using chlorine, it would be to use peracetic acid, which is a food treatment used in food safety, and it's not going to produce the same effluent contamination. So it would produce an effluent into the harbor that was safer and in accordance with federal guidelines. So what's being recommended here, because we did receive funding from the province last year, before we had developed this concept and before it had been costed out to within the budget that we've now established, is a recommendation to officially ask that we redirect the previously approved funds into this solution, which would be prepared to move ahead to meet that December 31st deadline.
Okay. Councillor Feeney?
Mayor, I just had a question. So within our capital budget, that is deemed to be a project. And now we're using the term, a trial. And so I'm just trying to follow the bouncing ball here on exactly, at the end of the day, is this a change of strategy because of the funding has been delayed, or are we just maximizing our opportunity to obtain funding through available sources at this? So is the project still conceptually in place as was originally intended?
Yeah, so I mean, the change of name, it doesn't even have to do with the funding program, but I'll explain why. But yeah, this project would consist of the physical installation according to those diagrams that you had shared of new equipment in the building, in the treatment building at the lagoon plant. And the reason that the name's changed to a pilot has to do with the conditions for approval. The way that this project would be approved to proceed from an environmental perspective is as a pilot. Because if the effluent produced doesn't meet federal guidelines for whatever reason, and I can't see how it couldn't because we're not putting chlorine into the water anymore. But if it failed to meet on some other level, then we would not be permitted to continue using the new treatment method. So staff feel that, when working with CPCL is very, very unlikely. An environment wouldn't be approving it, I don't think, if they felt that it was likely. But like the theory of gravity, it's still a theory until it's proven. And at this point, this would be a pilot until it's been proven that we can comply with the federal guidelines.
Fair enough. That makes good sense.
There is a motion in your package on this item. If no one has it.
Sure.
And again, I'm happy to put these things up on the screen. It can be a bit jarring. So, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like me to, I can. Oh,
Councillor Carver?
I can make the motion if you'd like. That council directs staff to write to the Nova Scotia Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing, requesting approval to allocate approved 2019-2020 PCAP funding to the town's wastewater effluent pilot project.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Seconder, Councillor Bain. You've heard the motion. On the question, all in favor? Motion's carried. Okay. Let's go to the next item on the agenda, which is, I believe, Deputy Clerk, the election update.
Yes, Your Worship. So, I'm sorry, I'm juggling a lot of screens over here. Bear with me for 1 second. Yes, so today was nomination day. So while council has received a report just where we are, because it's been a while since we've had an election report, we have published ads. We have now received all the packages from candidates. So as of 5 o'clock today, we have declared candidates, and any candidates have until 4 p.m. tomorrow, which is withdraw day. At that point, they can change their particulars or withdraw their name from the race. So as of 5 o'clock today, we only have one name for the race for mayor. So therefore, Mayor Devaney is the only person with your name forward. I don't know if we can officially declare that's acclaimed yet or not, Dylan. But we do have 7 names put forward for the ballot for councillor. So we will be having an election on October 17th for the office of councillor.
Unless one of those names.
That's true.
Is one or more of those names is withdrawn by 4 o'clock tomorrow.
That's a good point. Yes, thank you.
Is there a plan to do some education for the citizens on that whole balloting process?
Absolutely. So all of the candidates have been given information on the alternative voting process, so that if they are asked by anyone, they have some information. And as of tomorrow at 4 o'clock, when we officially know who we have on the ballot, then we will start our process. We've worked with our graphic design people to come up with some information, some posters, that sort of thing. We've been working with some other municipalities that have been held up as a gold standard for how they did what they did to introduce alternative voting methods in their communities. And as of tomorrow, we are going to start rolling that out.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone have any questions for the Deputy Clerk? Okay.
And if there are no
Then
more
can we
questions.
get a motion
we'll-
to receive the report? So moved, Councillor Now, seconded by Councillor Bain, to receive the election report from the Deputy Clerk. All in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, let's go on to the next item, which is COVID-19. Sometimes wonder why we still have this on our agenda listing. There's so much information and so much material out there. I guess for me, the 2 things that are worthy of note, number 1, of course, is that school went back in today, and initial reports would seem to indicate that it went well, that the planning that the education department and the teachers and the parents have done to move the kids back into the classroom were well-founded and well-structured, and time will tell how we go with that. When you look at some of the other situations around the world, and I realize it's got, it's not Mahone Bay, but the numbers in France and Spain and England and Brazil are just skyrocketing. Tens of thousands of new cases every day. One report today from, I believe it was India, was talking about over 1,000 deaths a day from COVID. So it is moving in an east to west direction. Dr. Strang announced last week that the second wave is not a question of if, it's a question of when, and that we need to be prepared to take extreme action on relatively short notice if the numbers start to change. But most citizens are cognizant of that, and they're taking the necessary distancing steps, the face mask, the hand washing that is being recommended for them. Anyone have any comments? about the COVID situation from that you see? Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, the only thing I'd say is having just done a 3,700 kilometer round trip and still in quarantine with Marianne now, but there is a marked difference between the different provinces in how citizens are staying compliant with different mask rules. So I know we had a letter on the agenda earlier that we filed that talked about masks on sidewalks, but I could say with confidence, having been to Ottawa, Montreal, and St. John and Fredericton in the last week, that our compliance level is dramatically higher than what I would have observed in other jurisdictions. There's zero mask wearing from what I observed in Moncton and in Fredericton a week ago. So while I do empathize with the concern that was indicated in the letter, I think we could all take a lot of confidence that Nova Scotians are doing whatever they can to take this seriously.
Good news. Thank you for that. Okay. Then let's go to item 7.3, Councillor O'Neill. Uh-oh. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I believe that
I've got a Adobe Flash Player update thing on my screen. Sorry. Councillor O'Neill, election signage.
I believe that the fire station project is the next item, Mayor.
Is it? Oh, yes, it is. How could I ever overlook that one? The fire station project, CAO. You've been busy on this one.
So, yeah, as it says in the package, the process has been ongoing now. We issued a request for proposals for design and construction of a new fire station serving Mahone Bay and the surrounding fire service area on June 18th, 2020. The competition closed July 30th, 2020, with 3 qualifying proposals received, and an evaluation of proposals has been received from Vigilant Management, who we hired to oversee that process, and a recommendation's been provided to council, as has a motion in that regard. If councillors would like to discuss, I just want to remind that it should be done in a closed session, and it certainly is appropriate, if that is the case, to request that now. Otherwise, there is a motion you've been provided with.
We have the motion. Somebody want to make that motion?
Worship, when it comes to the vote, I would declare a conflict and not vote on this motion.
Thank you. At 7:58. You have the motion that was presented to you. Councillor Feeney?
Mayor, whereas a design build request for proposals to construct a new fire station was issued on June 17th, 2020, with 3 proposals submitted, a careful evaluation of each proposal was completed, and the Roscoe Construction Limited achieved the highest proposal score. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Mahone Bay award a design build contract for the design and construction of the new fire station to Roscoe Construction Limited for a value as described in the motion.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Deputy
Second.
Mayor seconds on the question.
Mayor, may I request a recorded vote?
A recorded vote, yes. Okay. Just wait 1 second. Councillor Carver.
Yes, I just want to speak to the motion before we vote. I have the utmost respect and appreciation for our firefighters and the work that they do and the risks that they face and the pride that they have in their work and in their community and their commitment. And I recognize and value the importance of providing a safe workplace for them, an efficient workplace for them, but I cannot support the motion. There has always been the intention to build a new fire station throughout my 8 years on council. And And despite the many conversations, and there have been many conversations, there's never been a clear delineation of what is actually needed to provide safe, comprehensive fire services for this town, for this small town. It's never been clear to me exactly how to decide what to build, how to build it, what do we actually need. It's unclear to me. There's never been a satisfactory process for exploring the possibility of shared services with the Blockhouse Fire Department, which is 1 kilometer away. The 2016 discussions that I referred to earlier with the Blockhouse Fire Department and the Mahone Bay Fire Department, both indicating that they were willing to have dialogue, and that dialogue never happened. Somehow, in early 2016, that initiative disappeared. I don't know why, but it grieves me that it never did happen. I cannot support this very expensive, very large building unless there is some clear indication of discussion between the two fire departments, which are 1 kilometer apart.
Okay,
I also am concerned that there hasn't been adequate public engagement and public information as to the nature of the project and the cost of the project, and awareness of the implications for the financial situation of the town, with a huge financial commitment when we have many other already confirmed projects and other possible projects that may come upon us without any warning. I worry that we will not have the financial cushion to absorb unexpected expenses. I'll leave it at that. And I know this is an unpopular position, and I am grateful to the CAO for once having said to me that the people around the council table should ideally or theoretically represent the different perspectives in town. So I believe I'm speaking to a perspective that it has validity as well.
okay, thank you. Other comments? This is a recorded vote.
Mayor,
Yes, Councillor?
as a final comment, I think I didn't want Councillor Carver to feel alone in her analysis, and I really appreciate the careful consideration that Councillor Carver has given to this question. And I am supportive of her statements, as I am supportive of her sentiments of respect for the firefighters and concern that Mahone Bay build a safe and appropriately sized facility. And I have also not been convinced during this process that that is where we have landed, and I will not be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor, I think I'd just take a moment to say that, I'm very pleased to make the motion. I think it's an important investment for the community. It's been an investment that has been pared down after substantial deliberations. It's also an investment that's taking advantage of a unique opportunity to go make an investment when our cost of borrowing is at all-time historical lows, coupled with the fact that we were able to go to the market in a competitive RFP scenario, get amazing bidders, and we were able to take advantage of the unfortunate situation we all find ourselves in, where the construction market is really soft, and we were able to leverage that unique combination of timing, to our advantage. And I believe we've saved well over $1 million based on the happenstance of why do we need to make that decision today. We've all are well aware that we have fiduciary duty and responsibility to not only the fire members, but also to the ratepayers who have all pay home insurance, house insurance rates under the understanding that they've got a modern facility. And as we know, the mandate of the fire department has evolved over the last 20 years. And that our firefighters require and deserve modern infrastructure that will protect them, and as well as respectful of the sacrifices they've made for our community over time. And finally, with respect to our financial capacity, I have every confidence that this investment, which will last our town probably 60 years, is well within the town's financial capacity to afford. And if anything, it's affordable based on making the decision today, where we're taking advantages of the opportunity to leverage the low interest rates and an amazing price from this terrific builder.
Thank you, Councillor Feeney. Anyone else? We will have the recorded vote beginning with Councillor Bain.
I support the motion.
That's a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Carver?
No.
No. Okay. Councillor Feeney?
Yes.
Councillor Now is not with us. Councillor Deputy Mayor Noss?
Yes.
Councillor O'Neill?
Opposed.
No. And I vote yes. So by a count of 4-2, the motion is carried and staff will take steps to advise the Roscoe people. And I would echo Councillor Feeney's words. The time is right. The current fire hall is 62 years old. It was designed when we had no trucks. We had no women in the fire department. We didn't have to worry about the different drug concoctions that are out there that the fire department encounters when they're on rescue situations. The job that a firefighter does today is far more complex and far broader than what they did 62 years ago. The equipment that they need is by definition much more complex. They need the right kind of a facility to do their job. And I would even stretch Councillor Feeney's assessment and say that this is a 75-year building, which probably means it'll be ours for 100 years. I think council, after 6, 8+ years or more of discussion, I do believe council has made the decision that's right for the town of Mahone Bay. Okay. Let's go to now is Councillor O'Neill and election signage.
Aye. Maureen?
Sorry, has Counselor Now returned to the table officially?
He has
Okay, thank you.
at 8:09.
Thanks. So I spoke at some length in the previous meeting and won't be doing so again. And it's regarding the, because I covered the topic, I think, in the last meeting. It's a question of plastic and vinyl election signs and their use and overuse during elections. There are efforts around the province and the country to reduce the amount of plastic that we use, and municipal units are increasingly not using them during election cycles. And so in appreciation for the fact that I initially brought this forward too close to the current election, I would like to offer for consideration a bit of a gift for the next council, so that 4 years from now, this does not need to be tabled. And I did bring a motion to, I don't know if it's live. But I did want to sort of alter the wording a little bit. I was hoping just to be a little bit more directive so that we wouldn't have to kind of do this in a couple of steps if it's will of council to go in this direction. And my motion was more specifically to direct staff to draft a policy to eliminate the display of plastic campaign signs during elections as from the 2024 election.
Okay. That is your motion,
I'll
Yeah.
second it.
seconded by Councillor Carver.
I'd like to make a comment, Your Worship.
Councillor Bain.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with the motion, but I think it should go a little bit further. All of a sudden, we've had a lot of plastic signs showing up, gourmet something or other. It's all on town property, or most of them are. A lot of other signs that are plastic displaying one thing and another, they're on town property. And I think we should really extend the idea of using plastic to cover more of these situations that are arising. At one time, any sign that was on town property illegally, they were just simply picked up. That doesn't seem to happen anymore. And in some situations, it's starting to look a little bit like Burma Shave, which is the old thing in the States, which eliminated a lot of roadside signage. So my recommendation would be in support of the idea, but it should be extended to more than just the election signs. That's been noted.
Okay. Councillor Now.
I'm hoping that in this they will also include both provincial and federal elections. Any type of those signs to prohibit them in the town limits, I think is appropriate.
Mayor, just a point of clarification, Councilor O'Neill, can you just repeat the motion?
I can, and I'm very happy to do that. The conversation, though, is sort of going a bit beyond my wildest dreams for it. So so I'm very happy to rephrase it. But as it stands, I would move that council direct staff to draft a policy to eliminate the display of plastic campaign signs during elections. And I had put a time delimiter effective the municipal election 2024. However, I'm in full agreement of other comments having been made, in particular about provincial and federal election signs. So I would suggest modifying the time delimiter to be immediately following the 2020 municipal election.
So it's election signs specifically.
Mine is election signs. However, I'm absolutely in favor of Councillor Bain's wise modification regarding
Okay.
plastic
And
signage.
it's plastic election
Plastic,
signs?
plastic and vinyl, I think it's just a typical subject. It may be easier to, because I understand, and perhaps I'll direct this to the clerk. I understand that signage is handled in a very, in an exceptional way when it comes to municipal signage. So it may be easier to have a specific directed policy at election signage that is connected to general signage, but I would defer to the clerk.
I guess my one concern as we come into a period over the next 4 to 8 years where a lot of people currently involved with local politics may choose to retire or resign or not reoffer, and younger people will show up. How do they publicize their presence? And if we don't allow the inexpensive plastic signs, I can see people who have got a deep pocketbook going with, produced media, with electronic signage, with light up roadside signs. So a lot of people who haven't got the money won't get their name or their picture out there.
May I respond to that?
Please.
Because I think it's a very interesting point. When the issue is looked at in terms of its finances, the number one, far and away, the number one campaign expense is signage. So it actually prevents people from entering races, especially if incumbents have already made their upfront purchases. So to your point as to how people get their names out, I think that it really challenges candidates to come up with very creative ways and new ways to connect with residents, and we're already seeing a lot of that. There are a lot of handmade signs being made with COVID, sort of forcing different ways of interacting. I know that many of you are running, so if you want to give me a call and get some ideas, I'm very happy to share them with you. But there are things like street and greets and I mean, there's a kind of an endless list of very creative ways to get to meet residents and without signage. And I think it's very important to note that when correlation analyses are run, there is no correlation between the number of signs and success in elections. It's simply something that's comforting to people running, it seems.
Not even great big signs?
Oh, no, except for that one really great big sign. That was a good idea. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments? Councilor Feeney?
Just, Mayor, I'm struggling with this one a bit. I think that the development of a town sign bylaw that would moderate the use of throwaway plastic in our town has a lot of merit, and all good ideas eventually their day comes. The particular restriction on what I would call, political speech or political thought, free speech, ability to wave a placard, and being able to constrain that by legislation, fundamentally, maybe it's the small libertarian in me, but I wonder about laws of unintended consequences. I absolutely believe that this potential policy is coming from a well-meaning, positive place. I completely support the altruistic objective, but I wonder, when I drive around town over the last few years, and I have seen very successful campaigns that are denoted with signage like no offshore oil drilling or stop the salmon farms. There are other examples where political discourse happens through traditional means, not 21st, not everybody still gets their message out politically online. So sometimes good old-fashioned signs are the medium of the message, and I'm worried that an objective to reduce plastics and its impact on the environment will actually, down the road, and some other nuance and some other situation, the law of unintended consequences is that we're restricting free speech and political commentary. So I think that it would be through the development of the policy and the development of, I think, as Councillor Bain says, a more holistic policy would be something that I think I could get my head around supporting and working with members of council, and most likely Councillor O'Neill, maybe in a further capacity after the new term, on developing like a global sign strategy for the town. But we've had other policies like anti-fluorescent light policies that have come and gone, and there are other things that we've had that are really difficult to enforce. So I think if this motion is specifically for the town to address, for staff to start, gathering information to develop a sign policy, I think I can get my head around that. But to ban political signs, it's a little bit of a bridge too far for me tonight. But I may be able to get to some version of that down the road.
Thank you, Councillor Feeney. Councillor Carver.
Yes, there's a lot in what Councillor Feeney is saying that I resonate with. So, but yeah, so I'm split on it, but I wondered about coming at it a different way and whether the Joint Services Board, the waste system could refuse to accept them and make it sort of like an EPR, make it the producer's responsibility, make it the candidate's responsibility to somehow get rid of their signs instead of, or so that it would, that effectively discourages them from using them. Just a thought.
Anyone else? Okay. Deputy Clerk, will you do me a favor and read that motion again, please, that we're going to vote on?
I actually have questions about what was added and not added. I have the motion that I have is that council directs staff to draft a policy to, I believe it was prohibit. the
Eliminate.
display- Eliminate, thank you.
Eliminate.
Fix that. That council directs staff to draft a policy to eliminate plastic campaign signs during elections effective the municipal election 2024. And then there was discussion about a modification to include plastic and vinyl signage of any sort. So I am also not sure where we've landed after the last few minutes of conversation.
Your motion, Councillor O'Neill?
I really very much appreciated the conversation and you know, given the conversation, you know, it strikes me that a more thoughtful, thought through sign policy with a specific section for a, which we have, you know, in a specific handling for electoral signs of all types would be, it's something we already have in hand, and it may be more appropriate to ask staff to revise the existing policy with some of these new ideas in mind. So I don't know how to backpedal out of this particular motion, but if it requires that I withdraw the motion, I'm happy to do that and replace it with a less perhaps specific motion.
If I could ask, so we do have the signage policy on our list for review. That is one that will be coming up. And as noted, we do have some particular signage issues in town right now, but that's specific and really not related to this. That is covered in our land use bylaw. So if staff, I'm trying to get a handle on where we're going with this. So in staff's review of the signage policy, if that is how council would like this to go, what are the specific things that council would like staff to consider or take into consideration during that review?
Councillor Feeney?
Well, an assessment of whether it's constitutional and legal to ban political
Oh.
signs would be a good place to start.
It is.
Well, Yarmouth is currently being sued over it, but yeah, I think what was being asked by Maureen was more on the, you know, so if we say we're going to review, staff be directed to review our policies concerning signage, and specifically in consideration of municipal, provincial, and federal election signage. And then was there another in consideration of, from Councillor Bain's suggestion, is it in consideration of off-premises signage in general? Because I know that was something that he was referring to. Or was it specific to disposable signage being used by businesses, or both?
Councillor Bain, do you want to comment on that?
I will agree with what the CAO has said. It can be inclusive in the staff research, and let's see what they come up with for the next council to
Okay.
consider.
So in general, we're looking at reducing the use of plastic signage, disposable signage, and in particular, we're looking at eliminating election signage, pending the outcome of the town of Yarmouth's court case. Councillor Carver?
Yeah, I would be interested more in hearing from staff some recommendations around the issue about what's possible, what's not possible, what the roadblocks might be. It's one of those imponderables. I think it's going to end up like the violence in the workplace policy, that there are so many ins and outs, it's going to be difficult to pin down. So I would rather than trying to pin it down, to learn more about what the issues are.
Okay, Councillor Bain?
Well, I have complete faith in the staff that they will fully research all aspects of this request.
No pressure there, Deputy Clerk?
So am I now hearing
Yeah.
that council directs staff to review the town signage policy to provide recommendations in respect to plastic and disposable signage within the town of Mahone Bay?
You are so good at this, Maureen.
I think you do want to reference, I think you do want to reference election signage
Mover, are
in
you
there as
happy
an
with
example,
that?
though. Yeah.
Yes, and with the augmentation that the CAO was just mentioning, with a specific reference to a recommendation for election signs.
Okay.
And
What
Mo,
was the
just to,
seconder on that motion? Councillor Carver, did you second the original motion? Do you accept the change? Okay,
and just Mo, for clarity before we vote, to review town policies concerning signage, not the town signage policy, because we generally have more than one that will touch on to it. So I think that's a better phrasing.
okay. You've heard the motion. You've heard all the motions.
Mayor, could we hear that motion one more time? As Smokey Robinson says.
And one, and
All
Okay,
right, one more.
a motion by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Carver. The council directs staff to review the town policies regarding signage to provide recommendations in respect to plastic and disposable signage within the town of Mahone Bay, specifically including a recommendation regarding election signage.
Beautiful.
okay. That's the word we're looking for. All in favor? Motion's carried. Get the
Thank you,
signs out.
everyone.
Okay. Councillor Carver, CAO Performance Review Policy. You're on mute, Councillor Carver.
I'm rusty tonight. We had a lengthy discussion at our meeting in late July about needing a clear performance review process for the CAO. And I said I would bring a motion tonight. So be it resolved that council directs staff to draft a CAO performance review policy that includes a detailed procedure or procedure options for how regular CAO performance reviews will be conducted, and to present such policy to council for consideration after the new council is sworn in following the October municipal election.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Feeney is the seconder. On the question?
I just want to say that I suggested bringing it in after the new council, because it would be a good piece for a new council with new councillors
Yeah.
to work on.
Just out of curiosity, I know CAO that there's a CAMA process out there. We also have one that is being developed for the 3 towns that are part of MJSB, I believe.
Yeah, there's an overall staff performance evaluation program that's being developed there.
Okay.
And as to how we might be able to contextualize the CIO review in that, if this motion passes, I can explore that.
Okay, so that would become part of the process, but both the CAMA piece and the one that is currently under development could be reflected in the recommendation.
At the very least, it would have to speak to that context anyway. Yeah.
Okay, good. Any other questions? On the motion, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Councillor Carver. let's go. It looks like we're picking on Councillor Carver tonight. Let's go to the Age Friendly Community Committee. Draft meeting minutes of July 27th. Anybody have any questions for Councillor Carver, CAO?
Well, I think Penny might be about to say the same thing, but there's a motion in there that should have been highlighted, as it is a motion to recommend to council, and that motion concerns a draft action plan from the committee, which wasn't attached. And I'm wondering if the council would mind seeing the minutes of this committee move to our next meeting, which would still take place ahead of the Age Friendly Committee's next regular meeting.
I
And at
think
that
that's a
time,
good
maybe
idea.
we could,
Make for an informed decision.
and we'll make sure we do have the item in the package. Penny, would that be acceptable?
Yes, that would work, but the benches motion would work, wouldn't it, for tonight?
The which?
Oh, yes, there was more than one motion to
Yes, there
recommend to
was.
council. I'm sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Yes, so there were two motions, in fact, in the minutes arising from the Age Friendly Committee meeting. So the first.
Yeah, I don't think you have to wait to make the other one if you want to.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Thank you. So the motion is this, that the committee recommend that council direct staff to develop a multi-year bench installation program with potential locations being decided in consultation with the Age Friendly Community Committee in alignment with the CBCL Transportation Plan report.
Councillor Feeney?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, moved and seconded. CAO, comment?
Yeah, just a comment with respect to the timing of that. So I think that if staff is directed in this way, we will attempt to consider the timing also in light of one other thing that wasn't mentioned in the motion, which is the Lunenburg County Accessibility Plan development
Yeah.
and the town's operational plan. Because it may prescribe some standards with respect to access to benches. So we want to make sure that that is a consideration in the citing. And I know that the Age Friendly Committee would want to make sure of that as well.
Should the motion be revised to include the, with reference to the accessibility?
It certainly
Yeah.
can be. I mean, it's relevant consideration. It's kind of a whereas statement because we've already got that in our budget and everything, but it wouldn't hurt to draw the association if
It
the
ensures that
seconders-
element gets included in the decision process, I think.
So, also with reference to accessibility standards? Does that
Yes.
cover?
I think that's general enough.
So the mover accepts the change, obviously. Councillor Carver, you do? Councillor Feeney, you're the seconder. You accept it? Okay, you've heard the motion. All in favor? That motion is carried. Let's
And then
go on to Police Advisory Board. The draft meeting minutes are in your package. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Let's go on to the Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program, the monthly report for July and for August. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. And we have nothing under new business. Just before, Councillor Feeney?
Just point of clarification, Mayor. The award, the fire hall award is the number that was denoted in the motion. Is that for public consumption at this point? Is that number available to be communicated to the community?
Yeah, it is.
It is CAO, yeah.
It is public information now. My expectation is that the bidder will be advised tomorrow, but in about the same amount of time it will take for that to get out there, we will be working on just a brief statement to be able to put that out to the public as well. And I expect the mayor, as the council's official spokesperson, will probably receive an inquiry in that regard from the media as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, councilors, for participating. Let's go to see if we have any comments or questions from the public.
Sorry, have you already adjourned or did I miss that?
Oh, you're right. We didn't. We should.
Sorry, there's been a lot of bouncing back and forth. I wanted to make sure.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
First.
Thank you.
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn, seconded by Councillor Now. All in favor, as per Robert's rules. Motion's carried. We are adjourned. Public, are you out there? Kelly?
Yeah, I can see them from here. We have 3 questions. The first one is, has council done due diligence in respect to the need and options for the town to improve fire department service and governance, including possible amalgamation of adjoining communities?
I would say we have done due diligence. As Councillor Carver suggested, back in 2016, both of the fire departments came together in a meeting at the Mahone Bay Center. And the intent of that meeting was to talk about the possibilities for joint service. Amalgamation was also a topic that was going to be discussed. And we walked away from that table seemingly with both groups being in favor of continuing the discussion to see where it would lead. And within 2 weeks, Blockhouse turned the sod to build their new fire station. And that's where everything ended. And part of the financial analysis for the new fire hall was to look at the rates between Mahone Bay and Blockhouse, the potential cost, how the fire hall would impact that over a 30-year period. And it was still, I believe, the recommendation, CAO, correct me if I'm wrong, but our financial manager's assessment was that it was still the best move for the town to build the new fire hall.
If I'm being asked to comment, I guess I can't comment about cost comparisons to Blockhouse, but certainly a significant amount of analysis was done concerning options for a new fire station or renovation of the existing fire station within the town.
And that would include things like the amount per 100 that we are now paying. I think Blockhouse's rate was in there, and what the anticipated rates could be depending on what the fire hall here ended up being like.
That's correct.
Okay. Councillor Feeney?
Mayor, I think the 2 other key elements is, one, there's been extensive consultation on that scenario with our fire department, and council has certainly heard both formally and informally through that extensive consultation process between council and the fire department about the lack of desire to move in that direction, coupled with the fact that throughout the process we've reviewed the long-term operating costs of the fire hall, and the fact that the town not only provides fire services, but also provides electrical and water services through our utilities. And there's certain economic advantages for the community by having a heavy consumer of power and water, obviously residing within the town's limits. So, I think as it relates to kind of a comprehensive review, there's a number of factors that have been both financial and on a personal level from the personnel of the fire department that have been taken into consideration.
Councillor Carver, you were going to comment?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to go back to some things that you had said earlier, Mayor. My understanding and my recollection is that the November 2015 meeting that was facilitators was with the Mahone Bay Fire Department only. And it was at that meeting that they told us that they had talked amongst themselves, and we learned that they were willing to discuss amalgamation. Our council, Town of Mahone Bay Council, directed the CAO to convey our willingness to meet with Blockhouse. The Blockhouse fire chief publicly stated in the newsletter and in other communications that Blockhouse continued to be interested in dialogue, after, although they had started building, which they said they needed to do for the safety of their building, just couldn't serve any longer. So it was a little more complicated than simply the discussions fell apart because they started their building. I'll leave it at that. There was more than that.
Of
The
course.
willingness
There's more
to
to it.
discuss went on until February of 2016, when there was actually a meeting scheduled for the town of Mahone Bay to meet with the Blockhouse Ratepayers Association. And then there was no more content in minutes. Council
Deputy Mayor?
minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. As we were told at the last meeting, there was also a meeting at MODL with both fire departments, both chiefs, and both mayors and representatives of each department, and we all know that fell by the wayside. The council has made a decision tonight. I think it's a good decision, and I'm proud to stand here by my vote.
Thank you. Councillor Now.
Yeah, there were several meetings between the Mahone Bay Fire Department, the Blockhouse Fire Department, MODL, and the town. And the final one was held in MODL. I can't tell you the exact date, but the fire department from Mahone Bay was there, Blockhouse was there, MODL mayor and CAO were there, as were the mayor and the CAO from the town of Mahone Bay, and members from BARC, which is the Blockhouse area ratepayers kinship. At that meeting, we were discussing the amalgamation and everything, and the chairperson of the Blockhouse building stood up, said, "We're not waiting for anybody. We're going ahead with our building," and that's that. And so that's where the talks ended.
Okay, thank you. Did you have another question, Deputy Clerk?
Yes.
I think you said you had three.
Yes, I'll read the next two together. I believe they're supposed to go together. And I think I may have the answer that you need for this. MODL has posted their candidates online. Why wasn't MB candidates announced? And the next one is TBW has also posted their candidates. I'm assuming that's town of Bridgewater, but I realize this is not set to question staff, but I do have the answer for this, is because nomination day went until 5 by the time everything shut down. And then I came onto this council meeting. It's open, it's happening, but it's just not posted yet, so.
And we also give candidates until 5 o'clock, 4:30 tomorrow to
4 p.m. tomorrow
to withdraw.
Yep.
Okay, so the list of 7 candidates could change. Councillor O'Neill?
I just wanted to make the point that I do have a number of friends who are running in various ridings, and they did actually they really enjoyed the experience of being able to log on to, for example, the modal website about 300 times to check to see if they were going to be running against anyone or not. And I just wondered if we could take this in for planning, as the website is now being refreshed, and it just might be a nice feature for the next cycle to be able to just have that sort of real-time update, as they do have in, as was pointed out, a number of other surrounding municipalities. I think we're sort of the rare exception that we don't have the real-time updates.
We will be having them. That is something we're planning on doing. Honestly, we've talked about that. And the one thing we didn't post the candidates as they declared. That honestly was not something that ever occurred to me. So yes, that when we are going along, we will be having updates, percentage of people that have voted, that sort of thing. Any updates as they go will be on there. So we do have a static article on our current website, and the new website will actually have a button, election 2020 or something like that, that will open up to all kinds of updates.
Yeah,
If
the
you haven't
updates on
seen
the
the latest
candidates
iteration
putting their,
of the website, you did receive a message with the URL so you can log in and test drive it.
I was just going to note the, and then this is partially on me, but the announcements were intended to start after 4 p.m. tomorrow. What I would hate to do is make a big push on for an election that up until right now, we had no confirmation would be taking place. And in fact,
Mm.
until tomorrow, it's only one person's decision if our entire election needs to take place or not. So yeah, we'll certainly be doing a lot of updates after tomorrow at 4.
Okay. That's it, madam?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for all you folks at home that joined us. You can come back and watch this again tomorrow if you're so inclined. And if you see a member of council on the street and you can maintain your 6-foot distance, stop them and ask them a question about the things we talked about tonight. Thank you, council. Entertain a motion to adjourn. We already did that. All we have to do is hang up and go home. All right? Good night.
See you,
Good
everybody.
night, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone.